Welcome back to The Deep End, where you are invited to consider what it means to be truly present, to care deeply, and to find peace in the journey. Whether you're a caregiver, a healthcare professional, or someone seeking deeper understanding, this podcast explores how mortality can lead us to greater meaning and why every moment matters. I'm your host, Kelley Scott. I'm the founder and executive director of an amazing place called Clare House, where life and death coexist in dedicated community. Now, on with the show. We live our whole lives in the shadow of a mystery. We build careers, raise families, fall in and out of love, chase meaning and joy, all with the knowledge that one day it ends. Death, the great unknown. For some, it's believed to be a return home. For others, it's the final punctuation mark on a fleeting story. But what happens when you get close enough to feel its breath? What happens to our beliefs or lack of them in the presence of death? Today on The Deep End, we're not looking for answers. We're searching for insight, listening in on what it means to approach death from two very different perspectives. Not necessarily what comes after, but what happens inside us as that precipice approaches. This is not a debate about belief. It's not a search for right answers. Instead, we're exploring the inner terrain, the questions, the shifts, the fears, the unexpected comforts that arise as life nears its end. My guests today come from very different frameworks. First, Thad Hensley, a quality assurance manager for an engineering company who does not believe in any sort of non-physical realm. And Scott Gordon, a longtime hospice chaplain whose work is rooted in deep faith. Thad and Scott, thank you both for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, before we talk about the end of life specifically, I want to start with each of your foundations. Thad, can you share what your physically grounded belief system means to you in your own life and how that framework shapes the way you think about meaning, purpose, or mystery?
Yeah, as you said, I identify myself as a physicalist or a materialist, you might say, and I don't really think there's anything beyond what I can sense. It's the physical world and all the things of the physical world. So nothing that would be inaccessible of any kind of afterlife or other realm. So I think that everything that I've experienced so far after being born, this is what all there is. And then when it's over, that's all there was.
And has that been where you've been your whole life, or is that an evolving belief system? Can you?
Yeah, that has evolved quite a bit. I started with a Southern Baptist, then an Assembly of God, and it evolved. But I definitely was a Christian for quite a while and believed in that and was really active actually and tried to get more knowledge and deeper into it. But then another also interest that I had kind of helped put a little, I don't know if helped is the right word, but put a little doubt in me. And then I started questioning. And so that was I'm a science buff, so I love science. So I've always loved listening to science stories and reading about science. And then there's always this eternal struggle between creationism and evolution, and they're kind of not reconcilable, or maybe they are. But anyway, that started a little bit of a doubt. And so I got kind of worried about that. That actually shook me pretty hard because the consequences of being wrong about this are pretty severe. So I just put it neutral for quite a while. And then the next evolution from there is I got involved with a group of people who were just really interested in philosophy and armchair philosophy, of course. We're not really learned or have any degrees in philosophy or anything, but we read these old books, like starting with Homer, the Iliad, and Plato and Aristotle, and just read all these great thinkers, and they're asking the same questions. And it was only after some time of going through that I was really comfortable with being okay with saying, okay, you know what? I don't think I believe that anymore. And let me just try to figure out what I do believe. And so that was the kind of the progression.
Thank you. I appreciate that description. And Scott, for you, what does your faith look like from the inside? What's the spiritual landscape that grounds your work?
My faith is totally in the Christianity faith, more of a spiritual perspective, not just in a denominational perspective, but just as a spiritual perspective, believing in the faith of trusting in what the Bible has said and trusting in knowing God on a personal level.
And has that been your whole life? Were you grounded in that from birth?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So two very different frameworks, but maybe they're not as far apart as it may seem. One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about is what I've seen that I find really fascinating in when death is approaching people. And that is this phenomenon where I see that deeply religious people sometimes lose their footing at the end, and they question everything and they feel abandoned or alone and unsure. And at the same time, I've seen lifelong non-believers sometimes find themselves reaching out at the end of life, and they're searching and they're praying and they're talking to someone or something that they don't even know if is really there or not, but they're yearning for some kind of connection beyond themselves. So today I want to talk about what happens to our spiritual or personal selves when that idea of death becomes real, when it's immediate, when it's undeniable, and how does a belief or absence of faith shake that experience? So for both of you, when you work with people or you think deeply about people who are facing death, from your vantage point, what do you notice happens to them, personally or spiritually, when they really understand that their time is limited? I know you're with people all the time, Scott, that see this.
What I've come to understand and to see and to experience is those that have faith have that. I wrote a book called "There's No Fear in the Face of Death" because I know what's next. So for those that have that faith to know what's next, they kind of are prepared for that. I do run into those that have a lot of doubt. What was interesting is one of my latest patients was a spiritual leader on a church staff downtown who, at the point of death, began to fear of what was next.
Really?
And so she struggled as of today because she doesn't want to die, because she doesn't know what's next. And she's been rooted and grounded in church all her life in a major leadership role.
So what do you think is behind that?
I think the fear of the unknown for her. I think that her faith was more of a faith that was not the God kind of faith, but more of a faith of just living.
So I don't know if this is an ongoing situation that you're dealing with or not, but when you encounter people like this, do you see changes in how they are interacting when it stops being abstract and it becomes something real right in front of them when they're approaching that unknown?
I think it causes them to have the fear, and I do believe it does. And so that's why I kind of just meet them where they're at and just kind of travel with where they're going from the hospice perspective.
What have you seen, Thad, when you've seen or been around or talked with people that are looking, kind of peering over the edge?
So making that decision in the comfort of having plenty of time is one thing, but it never matters more than when you're facing, the end in that situation. So I think it's kind of natural to have a reevaluation at that point. Let me make real sure, because now it's really important. I mean, whether it's a loved one or it's yourself, I can totally see how someone would want to reevaluate, and let's hold on now. Let me make sure this is
the fun and interest of a philosophical debate is not so fun or interesting anymore.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I think that maybe I don't want to say changing their mind, but just a little bit of uncertainty about what they decided already when it was easy to make that decision versus now when it never could matter more than it does right now. So I think that's kind of natural. Makes sense to me.
When you see that death is sort of shaking that belief system instead of strengthening it, what sort of support can you offer people? How can you help them process that and explore that in a way that is possible for them with what they're going through?
One of the ways is I think is a lot of people just want that presence. Presence means a lot to them at the end of life, making sure that they just feel that they're not alone and then giving them an opportunity to express themselves. And then instead of trying to force our belief on them, just kind of go where they're at to give them that assurance.
And what about the people around them? Do you see that sort of unnerved family or friends that are seeing their person sort of going through something that's at odds with how they've maybe talked their whole life?
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize that one of the things that we're all going to do is face death. And so, but we never prepare for death. And I think that when death comes close to us, then I think that we begin to focus more now on really the things that matter. And I think for the person that's sitting on the sideline, they're not prepared, not ready to let go, not ready to go on that journey. So it's just a matter of just being that presence for them in order to help them with that faith and that belief. Because I believe that we all have a spiritual perspective encounter. And so when I see them from the chaplain perspective, I see them more from the spiritual perspective instead of any type of denomination or religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think about how families oftentimes in end-of-life situations and serious illness, they have a lot of opinions about how everything ought to be done, the choices that are made, the decisions that are made, and how the dying person should be acting, behaving, experiencing, perceiving things. And I think, honestly, it's one of the biggest sources of conflict that we see here,
Right.
is that the person on the sidelines is not having the same experience as the person in the bed,
Right.
and they're just not relating in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts or comments?
Well, yeah, I can't even begin to understand what kind of a stressful situation that would be. Like, I'd like to think I'm cool, calm, and collected, and that would be the same for myself, me experiencing that situation, but probably that's not the case. And I would have no shame for anyone. I mean, no shame on anyone who's second guessing, even if they've decided, there's nothing beyond. And then at the end, they're like, well, hold on, maybe because the benefits of an afterlife are pretty great. You can be reunited with your loved ones, and there's eternal justice, and there's all these wonderful things. And so I can say, let's not be hasty here. Let me rethink this, and what's the harm? And so, I mean, I could very well see myself doing exactly the same thing at some point, but it's a very stressful situation. So it's pretty hard to predict how anyone, even with someone you think you know pretty well, might react.
And you've been around this place a long time. You've been a volunteer, you've been a committee member, you've been on the board, I think. So, you've been in a community that's pretty death aware for quite some time. Have you actually contemplated and imagined your death, your deathbed?
Probably not too in-depthly, but yeah, I definitely have considered what it would be like to be at the end of my journey, let's say, through like you said, Clare House. Also in a former life, I worked for a funeral home, so I was around death that way. And then death is a continual topic in philosophy, so we've talked about it many different ways. And so oh, as a matter of fact, I'm also in a book club that's just death focused. It's I'm not sure, it's not an obsession, but something that has been a recurring theme. And yeah, I think I have kind of resolved how I would like to behave myself in that situation. And so just take some comfort in the life I've lived, and it kind of puts pressure on me now to prepare for that situation. It's kind of like one of the main reasons of thinking about it for me is I don't want to get there and then realize, oh, I focused on all the wrong things.
Mm. So on this other side of the spectrum, where there are people who have never believed in anything beyond the physical world, but then they begin to reach for something else through prayer, connection, a presence, a person as they approach death, or they're witnessing someone else's dying. That doesn't seem outlandish to you from your perspective that would happen. What do you make of that?
No, not outlandish at all. And yeah, lots of accommodation for that kind of thing. Because again, I don't really know what that situation would feel like for me. It's easy to sit here and say, I think they should do this, but having not been in that situation, how can I really make that decision or act like I know what it's like. So, yeah, and like I said, even who knows, I could even find myself second guessing all these things in that situation. And so, just approaching it with humility and knowing that none of us really know 100% all the answers and have accessed anything beyond this realm to really know for sure. That doesn't mean other people might be right and I'm wrong. It's just making a decision based on the information that I have and doing the best that I can.
And Scott, from your perspective, when someone who has never believed begins to reach outward, what do you think is happening in that moment? How do you understand that?
I think they're having that encounter, that spiritual encounter with God, the Spirit. And I think that with them having that encounter, they're wanting that assurance, especially at the point of death. They're saying, I better get it now, just in case if there is. From that perspective, I think that they're having that. I've experienced people reaching beyond when people in the room, they're looking up and seeing different things and they ask me, well, what? I say, I just believe, as Paul says in the Bible, that there's able to see in that great kind of witnesses. So I think that people get that sense of death. I've been around people that said that they're going to die tomorrow. And I thought, no way, how do you know that? And they're dead tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have that encounter when you are very in tune with the Spirit.
And, whether it's Paul or whether it's Plato, whether it is a deep spiritual belief or a strong sort of conscious thought and decision, bottom line is none of us have ever actually done it before, experienced it before, and it kind of levels it all out for us because we're all equal in that it's not something we do and then do again and do again and do again and get good at over time. We experience our death for the most part through this one time. What's universal about that in your minds, or what's the human connection in that?
I really am on to say that no matter what we believe or no matter what our thoughts is, we all are a spiritual being and have that spiritual encounter. I would have to have some type of spiritual encounter to tell me what is and what isn't in order for his religion. And that's why I think we get into so much debate in different denominations based upon religion instead of spiritual, because I think we all have that inner tuition that's guiding us.
And you don't particularly care what faith, what denomination, what anything. It's simply for you a spiritual existence.
Yes.
What about you? What about the sort of universalism of the experience for all of us, whatever walk we're on?
I think it's pretty natural for everyone to, as you're saying, regardless of our worldview or our background, to just be a major time of reevaluation. And we can go through life thinking that we're doing the most important stuff and focusing on that, but then when you get to the end, you start to reevaluate. Wait, was that the most important? Maybe I should have done this more and done that less, or whatever it is. And so that would trigger a lot of apprehension and anxiety. And I think, but also you should just focus as well on the relationships you had, the love that you experienced, the connections you made, and just rest in knowing that you did the best with what you had.
One of the most important parts to me, humans have been asking what comes next since the beginning of time, but none of us really know. We can't know. And we're left with a lot of this looking back on our lives, this life review, this reflection. And I think a lot of times people tend to make a lot of judgments on themselves during that time, regardless of where they're coming from a belief system. They're really reevaluating their lives and how that progressed and how they responded. How can that shape how we live?
I think our faith should be, I could walk out of here today and die. So every day I should live as if it's my last day.
Yeah.
I think that when we base it up on that, I think that every day that we base it on that, it makes our life so much better. Because, I mean, you know, I plan to live 120 years, but I also know that I can leave right here. And because of that, I just take each moment as it is, enjoy the moment.
Has that been an easy discipline for you?
I would say for the last 20 years, yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Any tips for for those of us that struggle?
You know, I did. I actually wrote this book called The God Kind of Faith. And it taught, you know, and because of the God kind of faith and the faith that we have and the belief that I have in God to know, because many times what I've realized is that I tried to be strong. And the stronger I was, the more I messed up. But the minute that I began to recognize where I'm weak at and put it on God, I don't have to worry about it.
Surrender.
Yes. Once I surrendered it all to God. And the problem that I had was trying to help God. And I realized God did not need my help. And when I realized that, and people now, when they see me, they say, "You're always happy." Well, I'm not carrying anything because God is carrying it.
And that's one of, I mean, you do walk in joy. I see that every time you come in this house. I'm always so glad to see you because I see that you walk in joy and you've got a smile on your face and you're positive, and it's an interesting quality to see in someone who is encountering death at the frequency that you do. How long have you been a chaplain?
This is going on my 23rd year.
Wow. Wow. And you find it not an oppressive,
No,
just...
I think it's a great journey to help people on that journey. Mm-hmm. And whatever exit they exit on, I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Can I ask you? So, one that lived 120. I also didn't want to live 120. That sounds amazing.
I don't.
Super. Well, let me a healthy 120. Let's say.
Okay.
But and I also agree. Let's make every day count at the same time, because I don't have guaranteed for tomorrow. But I wonder, like, how do you feel like? What do you do to make sure every day counts? I mean, we can put too much pressure, like live every day to its fullest. I don't know if that's really possible. But what do you do to make sure that you feel like, you know what, this week or this day or this month, I lived a good life so far, or I'm doing okay? Like anything particular that keeps you satisfied to know that you're not wasting your time?
You know, I think that's a great question. I base it up on my own individual self. Mm-hmm. Many people measure success based upon someone else. And I also wrote a book called Failure is Okay, because I've made a lot of mistakes. But in those mistakes, I've allowed those mistakes to be a lesson. And those lessons have told me that, you know, in this life, I may have made that mistake today. So in order for me to take each day at a time, I just take whatever's in front of me, try to handle it. And whatever I can't handle, if I wake up tomorrow, I will. If not, it won't get done. Mm-hmm. But I really, it's all about the mindset for me. Mm-hmm. I always look at it. The glass is always full. Mm-hmm. There's always a bright side somewhere. No matter how bad it is, someone else has always got something worse going on. So I just feel within myself that in life, you know, can't change the past. Today's today. I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm just in it for this moment.
Yeah, I think optimism is important.
Yeah,
for sure.
And you know, if we, and I tell a lot of people, if we change our thinking, we change the world. Yeah. It's all about what we think.
And I 100% believe gratitude is a huge part of that as well. Yeah. I have developed this very, very simple, basic discipline that I think helps me with this whole topic. And that is, every day I come to work and I park in the furthest spot out in the circle of parking lot at Clare House. And I park the furthest away so that I can walk all the way across the property to get to the front door. And as I'm walking up, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. I can't believe we've done this. I'm so grateful. I am so proud. I am in so much debt to all the people in the community that made this possible. And I think, and I literally do think this almost every day, if I died tomorrow, I could be satisfied with my life, knowing that I have not only brought into the world two amazing young men who I adore, and they are the light of my life, but I have also been instrumental in creating this place. And every day, that little walk starts my day. with being grateful for this place, for my children, for my family. And it's a really simple discipline, but it seems to help me feel like if I get the worst news possible tomorrow, I'm pretty much okay with that.
Yeah.
So you realize that life is about giving, not taking.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I can keep that at the front of my mind.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's you're focusing on the good things, because it's not like nothing bad's ever happened to you. And,
Oh no,
yeah.
really crappy things have happened to me.
but you're making a deliberate decision to focus on the good things, and I agree. The gratitude for that goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, can be a universal experience, that gratitude. So for me, there's something really powerful about putting these two frameworks side by side, not to argue about them, not to say that one is more right than the other, but to see what they illuminate. So Thad, in sitting here at this table together with me and with Scott, is there anything about his perspective that you find particularly meaningful that you will walk away with and ponder? And I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
So,
okay, yes, for sure. The positive attitude, the optimism, I identify with that. I'm always kind of an optimist myself, so I respect that and I appreciate that for sure. You talked about also letting go of the mistakes and not being hard on yourself, and failure is okay, as you said, and the stuff that you can't really change, you just let it go, because that's also like great advice, because so many people are in situations that they really don't have any control over, and it just eats them up. It's like, well, but all that worry, even though to some extent maybe some of it's involuntary, but you could probably let a lot of that go, even though it's still there. The situation doesn't change, but you're kind of letting the situation, controlling the situation, how it affects you, rather than letting it do however it's going to do it. So yeah, not worrying, not focusing so much on the bad, and being a lot more deliberate and intentional about what you focused on. Yeah, I agree. I think that's great.
So is there anything about Thad's perspective that's taught you something about the very human experience of approaching death, pondering death, kind of looking over the edge?
And one of the things that I ponder, only because you said it, is that he said that he, at the religion that you were part of, just kind of, I pondered to wonder if it was, what was it in that religious circle of the thinking and thought process. Not saying, I could pick up a lot from that, because I know a lot of times we can get hurt in ministry, and does it make us change our thinking? Because you say you came from Southern Baptist and Assembly Church of God in Christ and Assembly.
Yeah.
Was it a point in there that drawed you because of maybe hurt or betrayal or thinking?
No, I have no anger or bitterness about any, and I wasn't hurt. I'm not mad at anybody. It was really just a difference in the doctrine, and so just noticing things that really I didn't think reconciled with let's say physical evidence for evolution and creationism. That was like the starting point, and then beyond that, just analyzing all the little different details and noticing a lot of different things that to me didn't really seem reasonable or logical. So no anger, no hatred, or nothing like that against anybody or religion.
This may sound crazy, but I actually worked for a Jewish hospice, and they sought me to come work for them. Their beliefs are totally, totally different. I remember my first Jewish patient that passed away, they wanted to open the window, and they kind of feel that more in the reincarnation, more of that. So, I've learned a lot, and that's the reason I deal with each person on a spiritual perspective. Could I take away some stuff from you that you talked to it today? Yes. I could take away, from the spiritual perspective of the spirit of the unknown.
You're very curious about people's experience,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important too, that we approach that with curiosity. in a world where there's just way too much judgment.
Yeah. It is so many times that people would say, I don't want to see a chaplain. And for me being a chaplain for 23 years, I understand that. But once I go and sit in the room with them for about 5 minutes, I went to a family yesterday that was, didn't want to see a chaplain. They put it on Cold Purple. The mother was on Cold Purple. It was three sisters in the room with a son-in-law. I was trying to get out of there after an hour. They want to know where I've been because I did not go in there with any type of religion. I went in there just to be in their presence. And I'm telling you, they just poured their whole life out to me. Mm-hmm. And that's what people want. They want to know that your presence is there, and they want to know that you're genuine.
And I think that human connection is the biggest yearning at the end of life. There are people that absolutely want to be alone, and they don't want that. They want that solitude. But I think for so many that I see, it is that yearning for connection, and it doesn't have to be defined or meet a certain criteria. And I think to respect that and be able to be present in that space is what this house does every day without any sort of expectations. So as we're wrapping up, I want to ask each one of you a grounding question, and it's one that patients and families return to again and again at the end of life. When you think about your own mortality, what brings you comfort?
For me, what brings me comfort imagining that time period is knowing that I thought ahead of time, and I think I've said this word a few times already, but I'm going to say it again, being deliberate and being intentional about my life. And so I've had plenty of conversations with lots of friends and asking questions about, well, what's the good life? How do we live a good life? How do I not waste it? What's the best way? And you mentioned connection, and that's a big one. So I would say a person's life is kind of like a big bucket. So if I can use a oversimplification, because I have to simplify things to understand them. So I'm going to say, imagine a bucket. And so there are very important, and we're going to put rocks in this bucket, but the bigger, the more important rocks, or the more important rocks are bigger. So your faith, your worldview, your family, your relationships, these are big rocks, and they're going to go in there. But there's room for more. And so you get to be very intentional about what you put in your bucket, what rocks go in there, which worldview. And I just would say, be intentional about it. Let's not get to the end and realize, oh, I did this because my family did it, or because it was inertia, or I had pressure. Like, I want it to be an authentic decision that I made. And sometimes we're just too distracted to even consider making this decision on our own. So I'm just challenging everyone to take some time. For me, I have to go for a walk, and then I can clear my head. I go for a walk, whatever you got to do, and think deliberately about what you're going to spend your time on in this life. And I think having done that, looking back, and you know that you made this decision soberly, would be as much comfort as I can imagine.
So I appreciate that. And that's theoretical. Can you tell me what matters most to you?
Yeah. Specifics.
To you.
Yeah, to me. To me, connection is a big thing for me. I'm also always looking and enjoy making new friends and discussing things with my family and other people. So connection's really big to me. Something more and more lately that's more important to me, and it's going to sound vain, but appreciation of beauty. That's super important to me lately. And that could be a sunset, that could be getting out in nature, that could be a museum. Little things also are beautiful if you just notice. And so, like, for me, every morning I make myself cappuccino, and I have perfected this technique over lots of years. So I grind it just right, and I got a machine, and it's a process. So doing that to me is beauty, and when I'm done, it's beautiful, and it tastes amazing. Of course, I've made it, but I put a lot of effort into trying to fine tune that thing. Anyway, so that's just a simple example. You can find beauty anywhere. And for me, that's really a big deal.
I love that. I do love that. I think that's super important. Scott, what matters most to you?
What matters most to me is to be able to leave a legacy of faith. I'm a very great business guy, got a wonderful business going on also. And I thought about what legacy would I leave behind. And the most important thing is a legacy, the matter of making sure that my children and my family has the faith.
Mm-hmm. What brings you comfort when you think about your own death? What brings you comfort?
When I think about my death, that gives me comfort is the faith to know of what Jesus tells us in John the 14th chapter. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. To know that if I close my eyes on this side, because of the faith that I have in Jesus, I'm going to be in His presence.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing these thoughts. I wonder if you can name an emotion, a feeling, a value, something that would describe in just one word how you want to meet the final moment of your life. What do you want the predominant feeling to be in that final moment? Can you?
I would say joy. Joy, maybe a little bit of pride over having run a good race.
Excellent.
I think mine would be undescribable, like,
aw.
Yeah.
Those are pretty similar. Yeah. Not so far apart.
Not so far apart.
Yeah. Oh, thank you guys. The truth is, whether we believe in heaven or nothingness, a soul or just the body, divine presence or simple human love, death confronts us with the same mystery. It humbles us, it tests us, it reveals us. And maybe the most human thing we can do is to try to make meaning of it together. Thad, Scott, thank you for your honesty, your insight, and your willingness to sit in this mystery with us today. And to you listeners, thank you for walking into the deep end with us. And remember, as with all good conversations, listen to understand, not to respond. Kindness always matters.